No one at Greenville Middle School believed she could sing. Not her classmates, not her teachers, not even the cafeteria staff who passed by her quietly humming in the hallways. They saw a poor black girl with worn shoes and a patched uniform, invisible in every way that mattered, until one day, she stepped onto the stage and delivered a voice so pure, so haunting, that it silenced the entire gym. Every laugh, every whisper, every doubt vanished in a single note. This is the story of Maya Johnson, a girl whose hidden talent stunned everyone and changed her life forever. Maya Johnson lived in a small, weathered apartment complex on the edge of Greenville, South Carolina. The paint on the buildings had long since chipped away, revealing the tired concrete beneath. Rusted swings squeaked in the courtyard where children rarely played, their laughter replaced by occasional shouts or arguments echoing through narrow hallways. Maya's mornings began before the sun had fully risen. She tiptoed across the cold linoleum floors of her tiny apartment, careful not to wake her mother, Simone, who worked long shifts as a cashier at the local grocery store. Even at 13, Maya carried responsibilities far beyond her years. Breakfast wasn't ready because there often wasn't time, so she quickly dressed in her faded school uniform. The hem of her skirt frayed, the buttons mismatched and a little loose. Her shoes were scuffed and too large, handed down from her older cousin, but she wore them with pride, as if stepping into them might somehow carry her closer to the dreams she secretly harbored. Maya didn't have many friends. At school, she often sat alone in the back row, avoiding the teasing that came almost daily. Her classmates didn't know her story. The night spent quietly humming songs to herself after finishing homework, the countless evenings listening to old cassette recordings of her mother singing lullabies to her younger siblings. What they saw was only a quiet, seemingly unremarkable girl, whose shy glances and reserved posture made her easy to ignore. Yet, behind those brown eyes, there was a fire, a depth that even she sometimes couldn't articulate. A passion for music lived inside her, raw and untamed, waiting for a moment when the world might notice. The school announced its annual talent showcase with the usual fanfare. Posters in the hallways, PA announcements buzzing with excitement, and whispers of who would outshine whom. Maya listened quietly as other students bragged about their acts, from choreographed dances to elaborate piano performances. A group of girls had been rehearsing a tick-tock routine for weeks, their sneakers squeaking across the gym floor as they practiced after school. A boy in her grade boasted about a drum solo he had been perfecting, claiming he could play faster than anyone else. Maya didn't feel the thrill. Instead, a quiet anxiety settled in her chest. Could she really do this? Could she stand in front of her peers and reveal a piece of herself she had kept hidden for so long? That night, after helping her younger siblings with homework and tidying the small kitchen, Maya climbed the narrow staircase to her bedroom. The room was small, barely enough space for a twin bed, a battered dresser, and a pile of old music sheets stacked in the corner. On the windowsill, a single potted plant struggled to thrive in the sunlight that barely reached it through the grimy glass. Maya sat on the edge of her bed, opened a worn notebook, and began to write her name on a small slip of paper. It was the same notebook she had kept for years, filled with lyrics she had written, melodies she had hummed when no one was listening. Her hand trembled slightly, but determination overrode fear. She whispered to herself, "I'll sing. Just one song like Mom used to." Simone had noticed a change in her daughter. Quietly, she knocked on the door and stepped inside, smiling softly. "Thinking about signing up?" she asked gently, leaning against the doorframe. Maya nodded, words caught in her throat. I think I want to," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Simone's eyes shone with pride and a hint of nostalgia. "I always dreamed I'd stand on a stage too, you know," she murmured. "Life had other plans, but you can do it. You just have to trust yourself." Maya hugged her mother, clutching the notebook tightly. "I'll try," she said. "I'll really try this time." The next morning, Maya stood nervously in the hallway, pencil in hand, approaching the sign-up sheet for the talent showcase. The other students were already scribbling their names, chatting, laughing, confident in their rehearsed acts. Maya hesitated. Her fingers hovered above the paper. A few snickers and whispers drifted from nearby. "What's she doing? Bet she's gonna mess up." Maya felt the sting, but she drew in a deep breath, closed her eyes for a second, and wrote her name at the bottom of the list. Maya Johnson, singing. She folded the slip carefully and tucked it into her pocket, heart pounding, yet a strange sense of courage settling in her chest. That evening, Maya retreated to her room to practice. Her voice, soft at first, began to grow in confidence. Each note carried her heart, her long nights of dreaming, and the quiet strength her mother had instilled in her. She sang a song her mother had always used to soothe her when she couldn't sleep, a lullaby that felt like home, like hope wrapped in melody. Simone quietly sat on the edge of the bed, watching, her hand brushing Maya's hair back from her forehead. No words were needed. The bond between them spoke louder than anything else, a silent acknowledgement of the courage it took to step into the unknown. Maya's first day of the talent showcase arrived, and the school gym had been transformed into a stage. Colorful banners hung along the walls, and the bleachers were filled with students, teachers, and a few parents. Acts performed one after another. A dance group with bright costumes, a boy playing electric guitar, a girl singing pop songs into a microphone. Each performance was met with applause, laughter, or cheers. When it was Maya's turn, she felt the familiar pang of nervousness. The audience's eyes were on her, some curious, some skeptical, a few even smirking, expecting a mistake or stumble. She gripped her notebook and took a deep breath. As she stepped onto the stage, the spotlight felt blinding. The microphone, if she used it, would amplify every tiny imperfection. She closed her eyes, remembering her mother's words. Emotion cannot be taught. Just be yourself. And so, she didn't rely on instruments or flashy effects. Just her voice, raw and honest, filling the quiet gym. At first, whispers drifted through the audience, then silence, as every note she sang seemed to hang in the air, wrapping around each listener. Teachers paused mid-note taking. Students stopped fidgeting, and even the principal's eyes softened as the melody drifted through the room. When she finished, there was a pause, 3 for seconds before the audience erupted, not with loud, chaotic cheering, but with reverent, heartfelt applause. Some stood, others wiped away tears. Maya stood frozen, stunned by the weight of what had just happened. She had imagined reactions before, but nothing could have prepared her for this. In that moment, she realized that she had stepped out of the shadows, not to prove anyone wrong, but to share a piece of her soul that had waited long enough to be heard. As she walked off the stage, her mother met her in the hallway, eyes glistening. "You did it," Simone whispered, voice trembling with pride. "You shared your gift, and they heard it. Don't ever stop singing, Maya." That evening, the echoes of her performance lingered, not just in the gym, but in her heart, in the minds of those who had listened, and in the quiet understanding that talent, courage, and perseverance could shine through even the most unlikely circumstances. Maya returned home that night, tired but exhilarated. She knew this was only the beginning. Opportunities would come, doors would open, and yet she also understood that her journey wasn't about recognition alone. It was about being true to herself, embracing her story, and trusting the music that had always lived within her. And as she lay down, notebook by her side, she whispered to herself, "This is just the start." After the applause died down at Greenville Middle School, Maya walked home slowly, clutching her notebook like it was the only lifeline keeping her grounded. Her legs ached, and her throat felt raw, yet every step felt lighter than the day before. The streets were quiet, littered with the remnants of the afternoon. Crushed soda cans, forgotten homework sheets, and the faint smell of fried food from corner stalls. Maya's mind replayed each note she had sung, each moment of that stunned silence, and the way the gym seemed to hold its breath as she poured everything she had into a song that wasn't just music, but her story. Her mother, Simone, was waiting at the door, hands on her hips, eyes shining. "You were amazing," she said simply. That was all Maya needed to hear. In that moment, all the doubt, all the teasing, all the long hours of practice, all the nights she spent singing to walls of her small room alone, they coalesced into one undeniable truth. She had a gift, and for the first time, someone besides her could feel it too. The following week, the school announced that professional talent scouts had been invited to watch the showcase finals. Maya barely dared to hope. Scouts weren't supposed to notice someone like her, Someone from a worn-down apartment complex, a girl whose shoes didn't match the polish of the other students. But when she saw the notice taped to the gym door, she felt her stomach twist in anticipation. There was fear, yes, but beneath it all, a spark of something far stronger: determination. Every day after school, Maya practiced. Her small bedroom became a sanctuary. She experimented with tones, breathing and phrasing, listening intently as the melodies flowed through her fingers and into her voice. She imagined the stage, imagined the scouts' eyes on her, imagined her mother's proud smile glowing from the front row. Sometimes, she sang softly enough that even the walls didn't hear, preserving her secret just a little longer. She didn't need anyone to validate her talent yet. She was building herself up from within, preparing for the moment when her voice would no longer be hers alone. When the day of the finals arrived, the school auditorium was packed. Parents lined the walls, students filled the seats, and the scouts sat in reserved chairs near the front, taking quiet notes, occasionally exchanging low whispers. The lights were brighter than Maya had ever seen them, reflecting off polished floors and casting every shadow into sharp relief. The other acts were impressive, dance routines perfectly choreographed, musicians hitting every note with clinical precision, singers with powerful microphones and glittering costumes. Maya's turn would come last, a final act at the end of the evening. And with that, the tension in her chest thickened like a storm cloud. She sat backstage, knees tucked to her chest, notebook pressed against her lap. Every act she watched seemed to deepen her nerves. Some students executed routines with flawless precision, their movements polished like the expensive shoes they wore. Some singers belted out high notes that pierced through the auditorium, and Maya wondered briefly if anyone would even notice her simple, raw performance. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling her heartbeat echoing in her ears. This was not about competition. Not really. It was about honesty, about sharing the voice that had lived quietly inside her for too long. Finally, the announcer called her name. And now, please welcome Maya Johnson. A hush fell over the room, broken only by the sound of shifting chairs and the low murmur of curiosity. Maya walked the stage, notebook in hand, feeling the weight of thousands of eyes on her. The scouts leaned forward slightly, anticipating another polished, showy performance. Instead, Maya simply stood at center stage, straightening the edges of her worn notebook and letting her gaze wander briefly to the front row, where her mother's smile was steady and reassuring. No music, no lights other than the bright stage glow, just her voice, rising from a place of truth. She began softly, letting the words flow naturally, feeling them lift her off the stage and into the story she had carried alone for so long. Each note trembled initially, uncertain, but quickly gained confidence, spreading through the auditorium like a gentle wind. It carried the weight of late nights, of quiet struggles, of whispered dreams. Her classmates, initially skeptical, stopped laughing, stopped fidgeting. Teachers lowered their clipboards. Even the scouts straightened in their seats, their pens momentarily still. Maya's voice was not loud, not flashy, not perfected by years of professional training. But it was real. Every word told a story. The highs and lows, the subtle inflections, the pauses, all painted pictures of her life. The cramped apartment, the long hours helping her mother, the nights spent dreaming in silence. By the second verse, the room had gone completely quiet. The hum of fluorescent lights and the faint shuffling of feet faded into irrelevance. Only her voice existed, winding through the audience, soft but insistent, pulling at hearts that hadn't been touched in years. When the final note lingered and faded, the auditorium remained silent for a beat too long. Then, one hand clapped, hesitant but genuine. Another joined. Slowly, like a rising tide, applause erupted, not loud, chaotic cheering, but reverent, heartfelt acknowledgement. A scout near the front wiped away a tear. A teacher whispered something to a colleague, shaking their head in disbelief. Maya froze for a moment, unsure how to respond, overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of what had happened. The applause continued, building in volume and intensity, until she realized that her voice had done more than entertain. It had connected deeply, unforgettably. Backstage, her mother embraced her, eyes glistening with tears. "You did it," Simone whispered. They heard you. They really heard you. Maya's chest swelled with pride, but was tempered by a sense of purpose. This was more than a performance. It was a declaration, a promise to herself that she would never hide her talent again. The scouts approached after the show, introducing themselves and requesting recordings. They spoke of scholarships, of opportunities, of professional mentoring. Maya listened, her mind swirling, feeling both excitement and disbelief. Could someone from her small, struggling world truly step into these larger spaces? The answer, she felt deep in her chest, was yes. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Maya attended auditions and meetings, traveled to local studios, and experienced the kind of attention that once seemed impossible. Yet through it all, she remained grounded, returning every night to her small apartment and her mother's warm presence. The streets of Greenville, the worn hallways of her school, the squeaky swings in the courtyard. They were no longer symbols of limitation, but reminders of where she had come from and why her voice mattered. Each time she sang, whether in a studio or alone in her bedroom, she carried those memories with her, letting them shape the depth and emotion of every note. By the time she was invited to perform at a regional showcase in the city nearby, Maya had grown into a young artist who understood the power of authenticity. Her voice no longer trembled with insecurity. It carried the confidence of someone who had faced out and emerged stronger. When the day arrived, she stood backstage once again, notebook in hand, watching other performers execute their routines flawlessly. But she knew she didn't need perfection. She only needed herself. As the announcer called her name, she stepped forward, and the auditorium fell into attentive silence. Maya took a deep breath, glanced briefly at her mother in the front row, and began. The room was filled not just with sound, but with the story of her life. The scouts leaned forward, wide-eyed. Teachers exchanged glances, astonished by the raw emotion radiating from someone so young. And as she finished, the silence lingered, then erupted into the most profound applause Maya had ever heard. Standing ovations, cheers, and tears. The entire auditorium had been transformed by the simple, undeniable truth of her talent.